Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing? I mean, nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grief process. You know, with roughly 100 million caregivers in the U.S. and Canada alone, that's about a third of the population. That means that everyone probably knows someone caring for a loved one. Join Dave and his guests now as they discuss avoiding caregiver burnout and surviving grief. So find a comfortable place to relax, kick up your feet, and prepare to feel better and to receive practical tips and tools that you can start using immediately to get you through today and every day so you can survive your tomorrows. But not just survive, but to live life fully and abundantly. Yes, you heard me right. That is a possible goal to achieve. And now, here's your host, Dave Nassani. Hey, from Los Angeles to Big LA, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, coming to you live globally through the many platforms that we're on, including iTunes and YouTube and Stitcher and Blog Talk Radio and Mixcloud and Listen Notes and Blueberry. And this is our very first show that's going syndicated into 180 countries and 120 platforms. So wow is all I can say. Now our goal here is to do our very best to help you avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout. I know it's nasty. It sounds nasty. It is nasty. And we do have an exciting show planned for you today with my lovely co-host, founder of the Caregiver Space, Adrian Gruberg, coming to you live from Fire Island, New York. Are you there, Adrian?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. The internet in Fire Island is not as good as Manhattan. But you know, when I was in Manhattan, my phone would not work with all those tall buildings. The navigation just would not work, and it was always taking me down the wrong street. Today, we will be interviewing author of A Life Worth Living, Carla Feagan. Carla has over 20 years of research to overcome a traumatic childhood and now helps others to do the same through one-on-one sessions. You will not want to miss this show. And like I said, I'm Dave, your host today, and this show is to caregivers of every single kind. And the one thing we know about caregivers is that they are very caring and selfless and sacrificial souls, and they have this tiny little problem that they're very prone to burnout because they tend to put everyone else's needs above their own. See, everybody else is more important than them. And they need to raise their self-image so that they are at least as important as their loved one. And that's why 30% actually die before their loved ones do, and 60% become hospitalized, needing a caregiver of their own. So you got to change your ways, or it can be deadly. Now, we can also learn something from the airlines who tell us in the event of an emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before you help your loved one with their mask. Hello, what an amazing metaphor for all of life. Take care of you first. Not out of selfishness, because caregivers just don't like that word selfish. No, I don't want to be selfish. But it's survival. So it's either a little selfishness or you survive. You got to pick. Now, we also talk about grief and loss here and the devastating effects it has on us. Anytime we suffer a loss, girlfriend dumps you, attorney says you're going through bankruptcy, your wife leaves you, doctor tells you got 3 weeks to live, we're going to go through a grief process. It could take days or weeks or months or years. You may never get over it, but that's our mission here, to help you get over it, because it's not good to be in grief for years. We want to reduce that time, and everyone does grieve in their own time. So, if you're going through a long grief, don't feel guilty about it. Let's just try to get you out of it. Unfortunately, folks, there is only one way out of the grief process. There's no shortcuts, and there's no easy way. You just have to go through it. You have to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and you're going to get through the other side. There's going to be a light at the end of that tunnel. So hopefully we can help you, if you feel like you're stuck, get unstuck. And I want to thank my last week's guest, Paul Wallace from London, England. And just a reminder, you can listen to that interview and all our interviews right on our website, caregiverdave.com. Now, enough of that. A big welcome to my guest, Carla Feagan. I know you've been very patient. So welcome to the show, Carla. I'm so excited to have you. Why don't you take a minute or two and introduce yourself? And I like to ask my guests, just who is Carla Feagan? And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And why were you put on this earth?
Hi, Dave and Adrian. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Who am I? I'm a strong believer in not putting any names to yourself or putting yourself in a box. I am an authentic being. I live daily as circumstances affect me. I am affected by those circumstances or not. I believe in that there's like life lessons, and I've learned many life lessons and mistakes, no, trauma, yes, but we learn from all of them. And I'm a true believer in learning from what life has taught you. And I have thankfully been put in a place right now of being passionate and positive and powerful in what I'm doing, which is helping people to overcome their past trauma and their grief, because I've done the same thing, and I'm very, very got a compassionate ear for that.
Helping people is a good thing. We're all doing that. And if you're not doing that, I suggest you to start helping people because it'll make you feel better. Right, Adrian?
Absolutely.
And I actually have a name for you, Carla, so you can take this name. You are a free spirit.
There you go. I will take that name gratefully.
You are definitely
Thank you.
a free spirit. So let's get right into the questions that I want to ask you. Can you give us a bit of history about what prompted you to write your book? I was reading some of your history, and my gosh, is it really as bad as it sounds?
Well, actually, I never knew how bad it really was until I started reading some of my reviews about the book.
That's what I was reading, the review, and it says, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Do you have it in front of you there? Read that review for us, just so we're all on the same. I can read it if you want.
You can read it, yes.
Oh, I got to pull it up first. You keep talking, keep talking.
Okay, so I was actually told in 2009, from a very good friend of mine, that I needed to write a book because I was given many lessons in my life, and not just lessons, but how to overcome those lessons and how to learn from them. And so at that point in time, I still had a lot of belief systems that were not good for me. It's like, I'm not worthy, you can't do this, that's too much for you. So I ignored those lessons. I ignored those words. And I was told every year from the same person, have you written your book yet? Have you started? And I was like, no. So in 2015, I decided to go and travel the world for a year. And I did 21 different countries. And when I came back, it had changed me. And I had decided that I didn't want to go back to a regular old job just for making money. I had surpassed that in different ways. I had some aha moments. So I tried and I figured out what I wanted was to do something that would allow me to wake up with positive and passion and power. And I realized that would be something that would assist others, but I had I had no idea of what that would be. And I had another conversation with my beautiful friend, and she said, the time's now, you have to write your book. And I sat down and I started writing. It started off with 2 poems, and then 2.5, 3 months later, the book was finished. And it was one of the most cathartic, positive experiences of my life. Because as I drove down into the depths of despair and trauma, I was able to put all of the pieces together of how I made certain decisions in the life that I had lived and why I made them and the repetitive patterns that came across and how I started healing myself. So it was really, really wonderful. And the book is now launched on April 11th. And I'm very happy to say it's doing extremely well, and I'm getting a lot of airplay. Thank you, Dave, for allowing me to be here again, and Adrian.
Well, you're fortunate. You're the first one on our syndicated show, so you're going to get a lot of airplay.
That's wonderful.
I'm feeling it. I feel your passion. I feel it's just oozing out of your pores. You feel it, Adrian?
Good energy.
Yes. So tell us about your oldest brother. I wasn't able to find that, so maybe during the break you can grab your book and read the review for us so that you keep us all in a suspense no longer. Your older brother was born with a terminal illness. Tell us what that was like for you and your family. So you were kind of a
Well,
caregiver too, kind of, right?
in a off chance way for that. Yeah, well, my parents were both from South Africa and they moved to
Mm.
England in the early 60s, and that was to get away from apartheid. Because there was a whole bunch of
Mm.
stuff that had just happened at that time that there was a little bit of an exodus of my immediate family. And so my two oldest brothers were born in England, and the oldest one, Andre, was born with aplastic anemia, which is a terminal illness. I'm pretty sure there still is no cure for that. The only possibility that he had for prolonging his life was a bone marrow transplant, and none of us were donors. And back
Mm.
in the
Mm.
day, which was like I
Mm.
was born in 65, so there wasn't the connectivity, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't the ability of being able to go worldwide to look
Mhm.
for donors. So he was on all kinds of experimental drugs. So actually, once we got to England after my two brothers were born, my dad was actually stationed in Changi, Singapore, on a British Air Force base, and that's where I was born. So I've got a British birth certificate and a Singaporean birth certificate, which is quite unusual.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And so when we got back to England, my parents decided to move to Canada because the healthcare was better for Andre, and he was on experimental drugs. And I can remember seeing him like blow it up like a balloon and go back down, and because his blood didn't clot, every time he had a bruise, he would be back in the hospital, or he would have like nosebleeds that would last forever. So,
Mm.
but as a child, like for me and my second oldest brother, it
mhm.
was normal. We didn't know that there was anything different about it. And
Yeah.
even when we got back to Canada, it was, you know, um, at the age of 9, so that's 2 years after we moved to Canada, my mom had another baby. And so my youngest brother, Mark, was 9 years younger than me. My oldest brother, who was 4 years older, had terminal illness. And my father at that time started becoming a little bit, he started moving away from home and trying to getting jobs further and further away from home. So my mom's there with
Mm.
4 kids, and I think she was definitely the caregiver for my brother. And my second oldest brother was he was smart. He was like the president of our high school. He was athletic. He did lots
Mhm.
of running, and then there was me, who was the girl who didn't listen and
Mhm.
not as smart and kept getting into trouble, so it seems. Yeah. So it
Wow.
was so at that point in time, was when other family members got into play and I started getting sexually abused, and there was also
Oh
emotional and
no.
physical as well
How
as
old were you?
neglect. 9. Yeah.
Ooh.
And that turned into a lot of depression and anxiety and suicide attempts. But so it is a sad childhood, but look at where I am now.
Yeah.
So it's and that's why I wrote the book. I didn't write the book for people to feel sorry about me. I wrote the book for people to see, look at where she's gone from
Yeah.
and or come from, and look at where she is at now. You
Yeah,
know,
and
and
caregivers can use this message that you're telling because, most caregivers have a lot of baggage, and then you throw caregiving on top of that, especially if it's with a family, like a mother or a sibling. Things come up and you don't know where they were coming from, maybe thought you were happy for the last 5 years, but all of a sudden all of this stuff is coming up, probably from your childhood and
Mhm.
the relationship that you had with the loved one. And so, what would you tell some caregivers who don't exactly know what they're going through, but everything seemed to be fine until they became a caregiver, and now they're just really struggling with issues that they can't even identify? Does that sound like familiar?
100% it does. It took actually severe postpartum depression to take me out of, leading a somewhat normal life, even though I did get triggered and I did have
Mm-hmm.
adverse reactions. I had really bad postpartum depression, which had all of my memories all of a sudden flooding back at me. And now all of a sudden I'm having to deal with them. And I think the very best thing that helped me out was to start talking about them. I knew I needed help. And so I started seeing counselors and psychologists and doctors. And so for me, that was the beginning of it. So no matter what, you might have led a normal life for a long time, but then something happens, like having to look after a loved one and be their caregiver, and now all of a sudden, all of these feelings and emotions are coming back at you, and you have no idea what hit you. First of all, is to know that you're not alone. Other people have gone through what you're going through. Second is you need to give it a voice, and that voice can be to someone professional, or it can be to a best friend, or it can be to writing it out, or it can be to record yourself talking. You know.
Yeah, I see Adrienne nodding. She's a big fan of journaling, aren't you, Adrienne?
I am. That you can pour a lot out and feel much better.
Definitely. So yeah, and not to keep it inside and not to think badly of yourself, because I think one of us, especially being a caregiver, is we start thinking badly of ourselves because now we've got all of our own issues as well as trying to look after someone else and care for someone else. So get rid of that guilt. It's not anything to do with you, and look for ways of being able to release, of being able to give yourself what you need, because you can't give to anyone else unless you have something to give.
So how did you do it? I mean, what was your who did you talk to? I mean, how did you even know how to begin this journey?
Well, as I said, it was extreme postpartum depression, and so I was forced to. And so I immediately went to counseling. I got on antidepressants, and so that was the beginning. I would say the biggest aha moment that I had was when I finally started letting my story out. I needed to get it out. So I had a conversation with a girlfriend, and when I told her, she ended up telling me her story, and then it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. I'm carrying around all this shame, and it's not just mine, and I don't have to be. And here's someone else being vulnerable with me.
Yeah, and that's
So
the
that
definition
was
of a support
huge.
group.
Yeah.
No isolation.
Exactly. And for me, for the next 20 years, I spent bumbling and stumbling around. I'd have really good long periods, and then all of a sudden something would trigger me, and I would go down again. So I started researching different alternative methods, different tools, different technologies, different everything. And so I can't really put my finger on any one thing. However, I have to say that the writing of the memoir was the most cathartic. It was like finally peeling away the last layer of the onion in order to be able to set myself free. And since then, I've actually also found a methodology that I've been utilizing, because sure, we have these big layers of trauma and we can peel them away, but there's always going to be something else to replace them. And you're always going to have residual trauma that, you know. And so in order to live a happy life, we need a tool or a methodology that can help us eliminate those residual things and even the big ones, so that we can consistently improve our life and get to a life that's worth living.
Wow.
Can you talk about which methodology?
Let's take a break first and hold that thought. We will be right back. Welcome, caregivers. Thank you so much for finding your way to our community of loving and supportive caregivers. We as caregivers understand and know the day-to-day feelings of guilt, fear, and loneliness. But guess what? There is hope. I, Dave the Caregiver's Caregiver, along with my team of experts and caring caregivers, have made this site just for you. We are a community of caregivers that understands and supports you wherever you are in your journey. We are a place to connect with other caregivers, but more importantly, a place to get practical, actionable help. There are lots of ways for you to get support. First of all, you can download our welcome pack. This will get you started on your Thrive journey. Next, you can ask and get answers to your questions by posting them here in our private Facebook groups. You can also get live online support by attending one of our live weekly Connect webinars.
You can get practical, actionable advice by listening to our weekly podcast. You can hear and read other stories about other caregivers' experiences. Plus, add your own in our weekly Share Your Story forum, posted every Tuesday in the Facebook group. You can access essential resources and download practical Thrive Solutions packs, all of which are geared to help you thrive as a caregiver. We know funds are tight, so we offer all of our individual Thrive Solutions packs at just $19 each. Or for even a better deal, you can get lifetime access to all of our resources for a one-time fee of $47.97. Again, we're here to support you and help you thrive and to enjoy your life as a caregiver. Before this video ends, download our free welcome pack below. And remember, this is a place to get hope, not just cope.
And we're back with Carla Feagan and Adrienne Gruberg. So go ahead. What were we talking about just before the break, Carla? You were going to tell us something.
We were talking about the methodology that I learned in order to be able to release past emotions. But I did bring up the one of the reviews, actually the latest review. I found it on my website. Yay for!
I was looking on your website, but I couldn't find it.
It's on the home page. And so actually this is, as you know, I attended something called the National Publicity Summit where I met with a bunch of media. And so this is one of the media that was present, and she's the publisher and editor of New Living magazine, Christine Lynn Harvey, and it's distributed to about over 100,000 businesses in the New York metropolitan area. So she writes, Carla Feagan writes, from the abyss of a tortured soul, though wounded, it is almost incomprehensible to fathom. She has won a hard-fought battle of healing and wholeness in overcoming the most horrible kind of pain a human should ever endure, emotional, mental, physical, and sexual abuse all at once. While uncomfortable to read at times, her book awakens us to realize that there are others just like her out there, suffering silently and waiting for someone to help. Her book is a parable of strength and self-redemption, and I highly recommend it.
I know, I read that and I went, oh my gosh, you know?
I did the same thing.
You didn't know your life was that bad, did you? You know, because we normalize things and we minimize things, and you know, it takes a fresh set of eyes, you know, to see the forest through the trees. And that's why I always recommend to caregivers, you know, if you're confused about something, you know, ask a trusted friend because they have a different perspective than you do. But I'm so glad that you got help, and now all the pain and suffering has come home to roost, so to speak, but in a good way. And now you're helping others. And now there are people out there who think they're all alone and isolated, and they're the only one going through this pain, and they're going to hear your story, and you're going to save their lives, because suicide is big when you're in that kind of state of mind.
It is. It's been a constant companion of mine. And it's really interesting, one of the things she writes in regards to, I was always looking for someone to help me. And I always was, and I never did find that person until I finally realized that that person was me. And that was another.
You have to be your own best friend. And some people, what? You know, because they just weren't raised to like themselves, you know, because that's like boastful and prideful. But, you know, I think that I am my own best friend. You've heard the saying, you know, you're your own worst enemy. And that's true. If you can be your own worst enemy and you're always self-sabotaging things that you say you want to do, but then you go out of your way, either consciously or subconsciously, to sabotage it. You say, oh, well, see, now I can't do it. Because not only is there a fear of failure, and this really freaked me out, there is a fear of success.
Yes.
Hello.
A lot of people have that fear. A lot of people have that fear. And, you know, that's one of the internal blockages that we have. And what some people don't understand and realize is that the internal blockages doesn't only come from past trauma or our past history. It also comes from our parents. It comes from our society. It comes from our culture.
As well-meaning as they are.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of caregivers have it, is that society says, or culture says, or we were born to believe that we need to do this in order to be a good person, you know? And so it's the history of, and I believe that there are some genetic traits that we bring forward with us. And I think it's proven that there's some genetic traits that are brought forward, like depression is a genetic trait that can be brought forward. So,
That's right.
but you can eliminate that. You can be the first one in the line to go back and eliminate those belief systems that you might not even be aware that you have. It is possible.
The Bible calls them generational curses. You know, we need to just go back and just cut those things, cut those soul ties, you know, because they'll want to grow back. Wow.
Yeah.
Full-time job.
Yeah, exactly. And I have 2 children, and so there's no way I want
really?
my children to, yeah.
How old?
My son is 20. Oh, my son's going to be 28 on June 11th.
Are you old enough to have a 28-year-old? My gosh.
Yeah,
Oh my.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, I am. I have good genes. That's
Apparently you
another
do. Comes with the
Yeah.
depression, I guess.
thing. Well, I'll give you a hint. I traveled the world when I was 53 years ago.
Wait a minute. 50?
Yeah. Well, so I'm
Yes.
53 now. Yeah. Yeah.
Let us know what moisturizer you use, because I think we could use it.
Yeah.
So why did you travel? I know you said you traveled to all those countries. Tell me again, what made you think? I mean, it's like the Forrest Gump syndrome, right? Forrest Gump.
Run, Forrest, run.
Yeah. And all of a sudden he starts running, and he didn't stop running, you know, for like 3 years. Was that the
Exactly.
thing that was kind of going on in your head? Run, Forrest, run?
No, not at all, but it's kind of like that. I was an extreme introvert when I was growing up. I couldn't talk to anyone. And so in order to survive, I was always pushing my boundaries and putting myself in different situations so that I would be forced to talk. And if I wasn't forced to talk, then I was forced to be inside my anxiety-ridden mind going, you need to talk. But so I'm a learned extrovert, and I think I learned quite well.
I'm a learned extrovert too. Everyone can't believe that I was a shy
Yeah.
person who just didn't want to say anything, just wanted to observe everybody. But you can learn to
too.
be, oh wow,
Yeah.
you can learn this stuff. There's hope.
Yes.
There's hope for the introvert.
Yeah, there is. And so I was actually working, I had a really good job.
Wasn't
That-
scary though to go
No, traveling.
hop on a plane and say I'm going to do 50 countries. Did you know you were going to do 50 countries, or it was like Forrest? Just 3 years later, you know, you say, oh my God.
No, well, I had actually decided in January of 2015, I thought I was going to get laid off because my company got acquired by another company. And so I figured, and my sales were
Good time
going
to get
down.
away.
So I figured, oh, you know what? I just thought I'll just go travel the world. But I've never had that ability of ever being able to think of that. That's never been a dream. That's never been a want. Never been a need. I just flippantly thought that, and then I
You
just
had
let
money
it
saved
go.
for that?
I had enough money saved. I had a really good
For
job.
you. Unlike most Americans who are in debt and don't have any savings.
Was it a conscious thing, or you were just searching for discovery?
What
You
were
know,
you
I
looking
call
for?
it, yeah, I call it jumping in the flow of the universal river. I just,
I
Okay.
love
just-
these terms. Only a free spirit can come up with this stuff.
yeah, I just didn't think. You know what? In June, I got a call from my boss. He said, "Oh, we're happy with you. We're not gonna, you know, you're doing really good." And I figured, I'm not happy. So I'm pretty analytical. So I have these spreadsheets that you wouldn't believe, and I researched everything. So because I had no idea where I was going to go or what I was going to do. So I just went online. I researched different places. I put them down on a spreadsheet. I printed out a map and I highlighted all the places on the map. And then I had to Google and figure out where some of the places were. Like Rarotonga, Cook Islands. I never even knew that was a place before. But as soon as I heard it, I know I need to go there.
So you didn't just go to Omaha and Pittsburgh. You were going to some really nice places.
Oh, no. There was absolutely no U.S. and no Canada involved.
I'll let you be my travel agent.
Yeah. And so, no, in
How long did it take you?
actuality, well, I was gone for a full year, and I wanted to be in Australia for Christmas, and I was doing South America. So I actually did, I think it was 21 cities and 8 countries.
Wow.
So that was a little bit, I don't recommend that for everyone. It was, and then I spent a month in Bali doing an Ayurvedic retreat because I couldn't move.
See, you get me all excited now because I'm a sailor, and when I was 16, I was gonna sail the world, before I got, bogged down in life and a wife
Yeah.
and college and all of that stuff, but it just didn't work out. But I still sail when I can.
Yeah.
But those are all ports you're mentioning that I could very easily sail there. And
Very much
I'm not
so.
dead yet. Who knows?
You're not, and the time to make that decision is now. Let me tell
Honey,
you.
I'm going sailing
Yeah.
around the world.
So and you're right, a lot of those places were ports, and they were actually also really good dive sites. And I'd always thought, well, maybe I'll get my diving, my diving.
Maybe.
And I did. I went
Of
out
course
and
you
I
did.
got my open water and I dove in, how many dives? I had like 26 dives in some of the best dive spots around the world,
Now, you were
which was,
alone, right? You weren't married at the time? Or
no,
you were?
no, still
So
single.
wait a minute. So when did you get married?
Which time?
Ah.
The first one, my first marriage was in my early 20s, and it was an unhealthy relationship, and it was with an
Okay,
abusive man,
toxic.
so that one didn't last very long.
Okay,
And
thank
my
God.
second one was in my late 20s, and he was a wonderful man. I met him after I had my first son, and he adopted him, and we had our daughter together, and he was really, really wonderful. And because of the timing and the issues that I was going through and the postpartum depression, there was a whole bunch of things that just kind of
Sure.
built up a wall. And I believe wholeheartedly that communication is the number one success for any type of relationship. I don't
Absolutely.
care what it is. And I didn't know how to communicate at that time. And I had so many feelings coming up in me from the past that, I think that was the beginning of the end of, so we
Yeah.
we were together for about 9, 10 years, you
Sounds like
know.
you take full responsibility for that one.
Well, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, I take full responsibility about everything that happens in my life.
Good for you.
Um,
The
and
world needs
and
more of that.
well,
Instead of
and we
always
need,
looking for someone to blame.
yeah, because if I blame you all the time, I'm never going to feel better. If I start looking internally and figure out, not necessarily blaming about what happened, but figure out why it happened, why
Yeah.
I allowed it to
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Get
because there
over
isn't
the victim mentality.
exactly.
Too
And
much
it's
of that going around.
Yeah. And as soon as you become aware and you start going internally, then miraculous things happen. You start changing in ways that,
Wow.
you know,
You're a great guest.
oh, thank
You're right
you.
up there in the top 10.
Thank you so much. Oh,
Anything to say, Adrian? Did I cut you off?
No, I have to agree with you, Dave.
Wow, Adrian agrees with me. Cool.
Taking
Yeah.
hmm
So you came to an epiphany during this trip. What was that one thing that did it for you?
Well, there's a little bit of a story around it. That would be in Vietnam. I was
We're
about
in
6 months.
Vietnam.
I love Vietnam. Oh my gosh, I so love Vietnam. And so I got to Vietnam about 6 months into my travel, and I started from north in Hanoi, and I was working my way south. So I was about 11 days in. I was in Hue, and I decided to go on a trip, like a tour, a guided tour. So we went to the demilitarization zone, which in itself was heartbreaking because we went into one of the areas that had all of the pictures of the devastation that war can have in a
Yeah.
country. And I was already, heartbroken from that. And then the next thing we went to was the Ving Moc tunnels.
Mm.
And the Ving Moc tunnels is where a whole village of 350 people, around 60 families, lived underneath these tunnels during the war for 6 years. I think it was 17
mm,
babies were born under there. And so as we're walking the dirt
Oh.
trodden path towards the head of the tunnels, I could smell like the mildew and the mold in the air as it is like in a Vietnamese like jungle. And the tour guide is telling us to look at the sides. And I look at the side, and there's huge craters. There's some huge craters, and there's some little dips. Most of it's overgrown because it's been a few years. But this is where all of the bombs were dropped. And so as we got to the tunnels, it was actually a small hole, like in the side. And they told us that the hole was made bigger for the tourists. And I could see everyone crouching in and trying to go down in order to go down those stairs. And I was wondering, like, how much bigger did they have to make this hole? You know, and so as we went down the stairs, we got to the bottom of the stairs, and there was no more musty, or there was no more like mildewy smell. It was a dank, earthy smell, but it was cooler. And because of the coolness, however, because we were so far down under, it was stale air. And there was light strung along the tunnel. And there was like the tunnel, sides of the tunnel were like inches from my shoulders.
Wow.
And so as we walked, there were still dark little crannies and nooks. And there was this one little thing that the tour guide told us to look into. And he said, and it was about 2.5 people wide, and maybe 5 feet long. So this is one of the family rooms. And we worked down farther. And then there's another little hole in the wall. And it's enough for one person to lay down and another person to stand beside them. And that's the maternity room. And then we found air tunnels where fresh air came through, and fresh water, and the kitchens where they cooked. And there's 3 layers. We went down to the next layer, and that's where the army was. And then the 3rd layer was storage area for the war stuff, like bombs and guns and stuff. We didn't go down there, but it was as we were ascending up into the light again, I actually almost had a little panic attack, because the synchronicities, forgive me if I cry, but the synchronicities of what I was going through, the strength and the resiliency of the Vietnamese people to be able to live underground. You know, I think about the craters and the damage that my life and the things that had happened to me in my life externally.
Wow.
And going down into the tunnels is like me pushing everything down and not dealing with them and just pushing it down. I went through childbirth. And I went through, I went through everything. And so as I was ascending into the light, I got to physically or mentally see, you know, the similarities between what was happening for, you know, the Vietnamese people and what happened in my life. And it was like entering into the bright sunshine, because look at who I've become now.
You know, that is amazing. And not many people would choose Vietnam as a vacation spot or to go visit. But no wonder you are so enlightened. These places you went to were just life-changing. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I highly 100% recommend Vietnam. I went to 21 countries, and that is my favorite country.
Amazing. Let's take another break, and don't go away. We will be right back.
Dave Nassani, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. And he now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his incredible caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first, before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. Will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life, and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today, or buy one for your special caregiver. On sale everywhere, and at caregiverscaregiver.com. Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this? to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance.
Being a caregiver takes a special person with passion and compassion. But even you can become a little burned out from time to time. The Caregiver's Caregiver radio show was developed to help you overcome obstacles, adversity, and burnout, as well as just having a place to rest, relax, and recharge your batteries. We've all been there, and you're not alone. Now, you can take the Caregiver's Caregiver with you. Get the top 25 radio shows in convenient form that plugs right into your USB car stereo or computer. Learn the techniques, tips, and encouragement we all need to better handle the day-to-day challenges. For around $1 per show, just $29.77, get the credit card-sized USB card to have with you anytime you need a caregiver's pick-me-up. Just go to DaveTheCaregiversCaregiver.com and order yours today. Go to DaveTheCaregiversCaregiver.com now. Consider it an investment in you, and ultimately, an investment in them.
And we're back with our amazing guest, Adrienne Gruberg and Carla Feagan.
Feagan, yeah.
Feagan? Did you say Feagan?
It's okay. Whatever you want is fine with me. I take no
I'm saying
ownership.
it wrong. Feagan. Okay. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, have you ever been, I know you told me that you've been a caregiver for someone close to you, right? Just like a part-time caregiver, and that's your brother, or was there someone else?
There's a couple of people. So
Yeah.
a really good friend of mine, he's around 72,
Uh-huh.
had a motorcycle accident. He was going really slow, and he was just turning a corner, and it was raining. The bike went out, he went down, and his femur got, he broke his femur. And so we got him to the hospital, and he realized that he needed to have surgery immediately. And so I looked after him. I stayed with him from the time that we picked him up until like 6 or 7 days later, just to make sure that everything was fine and he could do things himself. And I've had another friend who's gone into some major surgery, and I stuck around with her. I've also had some major surgery and have actually not had anyone there for me, and got into a little bit of trouble. So I'm very empathetic in regards to, if somebody needs you, that I can be there and I can assist, because I know what it's like not to have someone.
You bring up a good point about asking for help, because caregivers don't like to ask for help. I don't, but I have to force myself to. Now, how did those two individuals ask for your help, or did they ask, or did you just happen to see and you volunteered? How did that work out?
Well, they didn't. I just did because of what I went through. I mean, I was one of the people he called to help him. It was out of town, to help him come back to town, and I just didn't leave. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. There was no choices. Sure. And the other one, she was talking about having it done, and so I said, I'll be there for you.
Yeah, so
and
it's
I 100%.
very...
I 100% agree with you, is that I'm probably the worst person for asking for help. And that's why I said when I had my surgery, I didn't. And I did have some bad effects from that. So I think
So how did you not, how did you end up all alone? Did you not ask for help? Did you not even share what was going on?
I did share. I was in a new community and not a lot of people knew me, and I don't think that I shared enough to make anyone. I'm pretty bad about that, but I'm working on clearing those beliefs. Right? No, I have a new system that lets me clear stuff up, and
please
I have
share
to say,
that system for those who are just like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I have to say, and I wouldn't be so passionate about it if I didn't believe it and I didn't utilize it on myself. As I said, most of my bigger traumatic experiences are gone, but I still have anxiety and lots of things. It's called the 7 Steps to Reprogramming Yourself. And it's 7 simple steps. What you do is you go into your emotions, and then you allow your emotions to be released. I offer like a 15, 30-minute free consultation, whoever wants to learn a little bit more about it, because I don't think there's enough time on here, albeit to say, I'll give you an example about myself. So I think money is a huge trigger for everyone, especially if they don't have any.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had just come back from the summit and I had a lot of bills that had to get paid, and I looked at my bank account, my heart just fell, and I got that, little pit of the stomach. And then for me, a lot of it's a constriction of the throat as well. Those are my physical signs of anxiety. We all have them. And then I thought, oh my gosh. And I had just started taking the certification. And I go, I'm going to clear this. So I went through the 7 steps, and it took me maybe about half an hour. And immediately after the 7 steps, I already felt a lot lighter in myself. Now, part of it is to your brain goes into alpha wave activity about 30 minutes before you go to sleep. So what you're doing in the 7 steps, you're actually releasing all the emotions that are related to that trigger and canceling them out. So you keep releasing and canceling. You don't even have to know why those emotions are there. You don't have to relive anything. You just go to the memory and you feel the emotions. And then you release them from there and you cancel them out. And then once you're finished with that, you replace them all with positive new beliefs. I am worthy, I am abundant, I am financially abundant is like really high up there for me.
Yeah.
Because I am or I have positive beliefs. And then 30 minutes before you go to bed, so you're writing all these things down, all the releasing and all the positive beliefs. And so there's a time when your brain gets out of the way and you can get into your subconscious, and that's the alpha state, and that's 30 minutes before you go to sleep. And then you reread all of these things, the cancellations and the positive beliefs. And then you go to sleep, and your body and your mind processes them.
Right.
And then,
Our subconscious is kind of stupid. They will believe whatever you tell it. And if you tell it,
Exactly.
I'm broke, I'm always going to be broke, I mean, it just, okay. Thanks for sharing that. But
Yeah.
for those who just, think this is hooey and baloney, but it's not, because what we are doing, we're not like wishing it, and we're just educating our subconscious that anything is possible if you believe it. And so you're going to believe this, and it will happen because it's been proven again and again and again.
Exactly. There's thousands of people that have already, I've got testimonial videos, 30 minutes of testimonial videos from multiple people on my on the website. And I've been doing it, and I'm a firm believer. So what I did, and then the last thing, the 7th step, is when you wake up in the morning, you think back on that memory, and you see if there's any emotions left, or you think back on what it was. For me, it was
Bad emotions, you mean?
Yeah, for me it was like, okay, let's think I have no money, and and it wasn't there, and I was actually happier than I was the day before because I had filled myself up with all of those positive beliefs. And there is science behind it, and there has been university studies done on this technique, which has proven that it's 100% effective.
And you've been back for a month now, so I'm assuming those bills somehow got paid.
Well, let's just say the universe provides in mysterious ways.
Cool. Have you found that, Adrian, as well?
Yes, I have.
And me too.
I started doing the artist's way and doing this exercise in the morning. And that was just letting go of anything that came to my mind that was negative, and then the positive things. And started my day that way. And it does work.
You've got to do it. There's just too much negativity in the world. I mean, you can't even go to a football game without being embroiled in controversy and it's all garbage. I went to a speaker seminar one time, and one guy had a little flush handle. He says, just whenever that happens, just flush. And that's the key word, flush. Okay,
Flush.
It all goes down the drain. All the nasty stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is, people don't realize that they can make time for that to write. I don't believe that no one out there or anyone out there doesn't have 10 minutes to a half an hour before they go to sleep of privacy to write.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If it works to make you feel better.
We are creatures
You
who produce garbage. I mean, how long does it take you
Yeah.
before you have to take the garbage out in your house? I mean, my wife gets a lot of
Yeah.
junk mail, so I mean, I'm every other day, if I don't remove the garbage and throw it away, it'll take over. And remember the New York City the sanitation department that when they went on strike, you remember all that garbage on the sidewalks?
Oh yeah.
That was a brilliant way to get what you want. Just leave the garbage on the sidewalk.
But it's sadly enough, a lot of people actually have that ingrained belief that they don't believe that anything can help them. So
Yes,
one of the first
that's
things to clear is that belief. It's like, so how does that belief make you feel? And going down in there, because there is a scientific methodology in regards to doing the 7 steps in order to be able to fully release it. But you start at the starting block. If you have a belief that nothing's going to help you, let's start with that belief. Because nothing will help you. I guarantee nothing will help you because that's what you believe.
Your subconscious doesn't know any better.
No. Exactly.
Wow.
Well, nothing will help you in many ways because there's the person who can't ask for help because that's so internal a problem with caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's turning help away. Oh no, I'm fine. I can deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge problem that our society has, I think.
Well, we have 4 minutes left, so what do you want to make sure that we cover in those final 4 minutes before we say goodbye to the world?
I don't know. That's now that you asked me that question, my mind just goes blank.
I think we have helped caregivers a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Adrian, haven't we discussed a lot of things that that they need help with? Caregivers specifically.
I think that there's so much that can be learned from everything that Carla said.
Mm-hmm.
If people really listen and believe that, just try. You know, it's you can do it too.
I think the biggest thing is for everyone to know is that they are worth it.
Amen.
You are worth it.
So they can call you or contact you and get a free consultation about the 7 steps of how they can change their life.
Exactly. There's on my Work With Me page on my website, there's an online scheduler. It says 15 minutes, but I'm willing to go over that. We can do 30 minutes. I also have a special on right now, 50% off the first session. Once you want to go ahead with it, then there's 50% off the first session. So by all means, there's no way, I mean, I strongly believe that going out and researching and seeing things that may help you. Right. And if it's something that resonates with you, especially if you get it for free, then go ahead and do that. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
That's right. You just have that attitude. That's a great attitude to have.
Yeah.
So,
what is your website, Carla? You didn't tell us that.
It's carlafeagan.com. That's CARLA, F as in Frank, EAGAN.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you go to the Work With Me page, there's a lot of information on there.
And Adrian, how do we get a hold of you if somebody wants to inquire more about the caregiver space? 165,000 followers or so.
Wow.
166 plus.
Oh, excuse me.
I give all the credit to Corey on that one.
Yes, your administrator.
It's Adrienne, ADRIENNE at thecaregiverspace.org.
Caregiverspace.org.
And the website is thecaregiverspace.org.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys were awesome. And my contact information is go to caregiverdave.com, or you can just Google Caregiver and Dave. That'll get you there too. And just for doing that, we've got a free gift for you. Go to the home page and watch our video, and that will explain how you can join our wonderful community. We've got blogs, we've got articles. It's just packed with resources. I mean, I interview individuals who not only have survived but have thrived caregiving. I produce uplifting videos, weekly conference calls. I even have a coaching program. So we want to love on you, okay? We don't want you to go to the morgue. We don't want you to go to the hospital, because remember, 60% of you caregivers out there are dying just because you aren't putting your needs first, and you aren't asking for help, and you're letting guilt eat you alive. And if you're one of the lucky ones, the 60%, well, okay, they will quite often become sicker than the ones they're caring for, eventually needing a caregiver of their own. So, like I said, I've made all the mistakes. I just want to help you not make the mistakes I made, okay? I want you to stop hurting. I want you to not give up like I almost gave up. So come on down, and like they say, come on down and go to caregiverdave.com and just watch our welcome video. All right? Okay. Well, thanks again, and we will see you next time, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio show. Goodbye.